Good afternoon, and welcome to today's MSU AA Professional Series webcast, The Joyful Job Search Through the Holiday Season. My name is Lisa Parker, and I am the Director of Alumni Career and Business Services for the MSU Alumni Association. Joining me today, by special surprise, is actually my partner in crime, Dave Isbell. If you've been connected to the Alumni Association and its career services and professional development initiatives, you're probably familiar with that name. My apologies to those who were expecting to tune into this cast last week. We have had our share of germs working through our office, and I unfortunately was not, my voice was not in a position to deliver a cast to you last week. But this is a message we wanted to be sure to get out in front of you ahead of the coming events for the next couple of weeks, the remaining 12 days in 2013. I am going to do my level best to make sure that this message is not preachy and that I'm not overly trite. For those of you who are engaged in a job search through the holiday season, if you are currently without work, and especially if you've been without work for a period of time, this is a tricky time of year. And I certainly don't want to minimize what you're feeling going through this process. But our goal today is to talk about how to get the upper hand for the remaining portion of the year and moving into early 2014. I also want to let you know that our first webcast of 2014 will take place on January 9th, and it is called Pick Me, Resume Strategies to Get You Noticed. And it's going to be conducted by Kelly Holdcraft, who is one of our national board members and who has extensive experience in career services, originally with Georgetown, and she's now head of alumni relations at William and Mary. So I would make a note to join us on January 9th. We will begin promoting that cast, I would imagine, early next week on our webcast, on our webpage, alumni.msu.edu professional series. And if you received an email about this cast, you will likely receive an email about that one. So moving forward, let's jump into this cast. This is meant to be a discussion. Dave and I will be discussing things openly. If you have questions or comments you would like to make, please feel free to introduce them into the chat area on the left-hand side of your screen. Also, I would like to point out that this cast is being recorded, and if you would like a copy of it, you are welcome to email our program assistant, Brenda Haynes, and her email address appears in the chat too. So let's start out about what we are going to attempt to cover today. And I actually reversed the order of the content based on what was in the original promotion because it really seems important to start with the emotional aspect of the job search through the holidays. And so we're going to start with managing your stress and frustration. Then we're going to move on to minimizing unwanted advice from family and friends, although I'm sure most of you don't have that problem, right? And initiating and maintaining contact, whether it's with networking sources or prospective employers through this time of year. And then we're going to close things out with just a conversation on how you can use the holiday season to expand your networking circles, right? So moving forward, we're going to start with a picture. And this is a picture that I want you to take a good look at. And it's not actually a picture of an individual who's looking for work. This is a picture that I swiped from a website for attorneys, and this is this attorney that's frustrated for whatever reason. But I thought that this picture captured what a number of professionals on a job search can feel like. You're stuck in the middle of a road. You're not really going anywhere. You're alone, and it's just a frustrating process. You're dressed up, you're ready to go, you're ready to be put to work, and you're having a hard time finding a way to do that. But it's important for you to realize that you tend to look the way you feel, and I want you to imagine that when this time of year is when other people tend to feel more like this. And this is a happy crowd. This was captured on a street cam. I'm not sure if it was in Times Square or what. But these are individuals that are in a festive mood. They're happy, they're celebrating, and there's a lot of people around them. They all have a similar mindset and attitude at the moment. And I want you to think again about a time when you felt excited, when you felt pumped up, and where you didn't really want to be bothered by anything that felt negative. And I want you to think about how you would have felt at a time when you had that emotion, had you encountered an individual who felt like this. And it's human nature, and it doesn't mean that the person doesn't care about you, or they don't have the ability to help you or an interest in helping you. But there's a natural desire to kind of distance yourself from things that change your mood. Like even right now, I'm making a better attempt to not watch the nightly news, right? Because the nightly news is always full of things that weigh you down, because I don't want to feel weighed down through this time of year. And I think that's true for a lot of people. So I want you to recognize that even if you're in this job search and you've been at it for a while and it's hard to find a way to be pumped up and excited, to the extent that you are able to, those are the times to be out and circulating with other individuals, and to use that energy and that time wisely, so you are not encountering individuals who feel like this, looking like this, because that is an effort that's in futility, quite frankly. So let's get started with talking about attitude. And again, really going to try hard not to be preachy here, but these are some things that Dave and I feel are important to reinforce and remind you of. This is true not just during the holiday season, this is true year-round, but is particularly important in a time of year when people are focused on looking with excitement to a new year, on reestablishing connections and building relationships, and just generally being happy. So the first point is, of course, being mentally and physically attractive is an asset. Now, I want to clarify this, and Dave, you're welcome to weigh in if it interests you. We are not talking about you being Giselle, okay? We are talking about magnetism. Attraction is about being drawn to individuals. And when you are on a job search, it's so important to have people want to be around you. And it's important for you to want to be around other people too, but that's a discussion for later in this cast. So what makes you attractive to other people? What makes people want to be around you? Well, it could be a number of things. It could be the fact that you're smiling. It could be the fact that you are open enough to interacting with them, that you're showing interest in them. You're asking genuine questions of them. You are talking about things that are exciting and engaging, right? And when we're looking for work in the holiday season, it's that time of year where our lack of employment or our underemployment is felt by us, probably to a greater degree than other times of the year. So it can be hard to do those things that would make us magnetic, but it's important to realize that where you gain traction in a job search, it's when you have people who are willing to congregate around you and help make whatever is your goal become a reality. And you need to have some level of attraction, some level of magnetism to pull that off if you are not an individual that's just capable of doing it all yourself. And I have yet to meet an individual, truly, who can do this entirely on their own. If you are at a moment where you cannot be those ladies in the crowd with Happy New Year written on their hand, when you're that gentleman who's sitting in that middle of the street looking and feeling broken, then it might be wise for you to choose to sit something out, to sit a networking event out, to minimize your time at a family event, because there are occasions where absence is better than participating in something in a negative way. And I'm not trying to suggest that people don't want to be around you when you're looking for work. That's not the case at all. The point that I'm trying to make is, if the process of you looking for work at that particular moment has you in a place where you can't make a positive contribution to something, to that event, to that experience, or at least a contribution that isn't felt, it might be to your detriment to continue to participate. And I'll give an example of a friend of mine. Her husband had another friend who'd been looking for work for a period of time, and he was also finding himself to be a bit alone through the holiday season, because he had had some family changes right at the same time as he was looking for work, which is not fun and unfortunately not uncommon. And so they invited him into their home for the holiday season, and he proceeded to spend the entire time talking about his situation and how impossible it was. And by the way, don't get too comfortable because my situation could easily become your situation. And it ruined everybody's holiday. That does not inspire people wanting to kind of jump in and be on your team and take you to the next level. So that's a moment where maybe for that first year, it would have been wise for him to not be staying at a person's house for 3 days, but be there in moments that are shorter lived when his time there could be of better quality. Another point in terms of attitude is your view of yourself is contagious. It's oftentimes how people feel about you. You know, if you are looking confident about your situation, if you are expressing confidence in your abilities, it's natural for people to mirror that. If there's doubt in your world, and it's completely normal to have that doubt. It's human to have that doubt. I'm not trying to give the impression that you need to be this 100% confident individual. But when you take a moment to talk about yourself to others, whether it's friends or family, and we tend to let our guard down more with friends and family and feel like, oh, hey, that doesn't matter. I can just let it all hang out and be honest with them. But those are the individuals that are probably the most invested in helping you get to that successful outcome. So they really need to be viewed as important advocates for you. So you need to be around those individuals, showing that you have a good view of yourself. And there are redeemable qualities and redeemable skills, and it's easy if you've been looking for work for a period of time and experiencing rejection to forget about those. So this would be a good time to just go through some mental exercises to remind yourself of, hey, this is what I'm good at. These are skills that I still that could make a difference in an environment if I found myself in the right situation. Productive information rules. And in this time of year especially, but again, this is true year-round, you want to be supplying details when you do take the time to interact with other people that people can act on. It doesn't help to give a restatement to everybody you meet of your history of what led you to now and all of the challenges that you faced to this date, because there's nothing that I can do as your loved one, as your friend, as your networking contact, as your prospective employer to help change your history. That part's already done in your life. I can play a role in shaping your future. And so if you talk more about where you've been than where you're going, you've automatically limited your the ability of the people who are trying to help you to actually do that, and you've kept yourself in a place that has been disappointing to you versus moving yourself to a better place, that place where you're actually getting to where you want to go, which is going to change your attitude as a whole. And then the final thought in terms of attitude is continuing to remember that it's not about you. And this is something that is hard to hear. But it's important to register, because when you're a job seeker, when you're looking for work, especially if you are not currently employed, your sense of self becomes heightened. You're very aware of, for example, I need to make this amount of money because I've got this mortgage payment, I've got this car payment. You've got a heightened sense of self because you're forced to promote yourself constantly. You're putting together a resume about you. You're putting together cover letters about you. You're having people interview you and judge you. And so your sense of self is at an all-time high. And it becomes, and there's also a tendency to isolate yourself a bit. I mean, Dave and I work with a number of professionals who, even if they were interrupted that, then they disappeared a little bit. They pulled back from some of the circles that they normally participated in, and they maybe their best relationship was with their computer keyboard. And because of that, when the holiday season comes out and you are almost forced into these situations to interact with other people. If you've been choosing to be isolated until you got to that outcome where you felt like you could resurface again and say, well, here I am, it's your social skills have suffered. And the ability to think about other people and listen to what they're saying and ask them things that show that you feel that they are important to you is compromised. And that's a natural human thing. And it's something to, again, be aware of. And sometimes the easiest way to solve that problem is to go into any situation, whether it's a family gathering, a networking event, and tell yourself from the very get-go, I am not going to talk about me unless somebody asks me about me. And if somebody, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm not going to be isolated until somebody stops by to ask about me. In fact, to the opposite effect, I am going to make my goal to make this day about the people who I encounter. And I'm going to ask them certain things, and we're going to talk about that as we get into the networking portion of this conversation that will show them that I'm interested in them. And when I ask the question, I'm also going to listen to what they say. And I'm going to show that I've listened to what they've said by asking them more questions based on the information that they gave me. And when you can actually get back into the swing of having other people be the focus of your world, it really does wonders to your overall attitude and how others view you during this time when they're trying to be happy and festive. So let's talk about, real quick, some of the things that influence our attitude through the holiday season. And this seems like it doesn't have anything to do with a job search, but I promise you it does. Because then we're talking about being attractive and feeling good and drawing other people in and being able to have a positive disposition. These 5 things are important to being able to pull that off. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm eating things this time of year that I almost never eat. And I feel differently because of it, right? And so we've got to be thinking about our diet. We've got to be thinking about how it affects our mood. We need to be thinking about our physical activity. We need to be thinking about money. The real frustrating thing about this time of year is, especially with the age of the internet, we are constantly inundated with messaging to spend, 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 spend. And if we're looking for work, spending may be the last thing that we want or can or should be doing, right? And so, but that doesn't mean that we don't, because we're nudged to do so on a regular basis. So we've got to be thinking about this, and we've got to be honest with ourselves that, you know, if me spending beyond what I really can and should spend is going to have not just a financial consequence, but an emotional consequence for me, then I might need to have a different plan of how I can show people that they matter to me through this season. And a big way you can do that is with the lower left-hand corner, the how can I help? I mean, this is a season of giving. And one of the challenges that the job seekers that we interact with have is they really hate being in this position that they feel like they need from other people. They need help, they need connections, they need financial support. It's new to them. And again, human nature, human reaction. So sometimes a good way to counter that, is to come out in full-on help mode, in the giving of self, in the giving of thought, in the giving of time, in the giving of your ear to help balance that. And then, of course, in the lower right corner, getting the proper amount of sleep, which is tricky. Again, this time of year, anxiety is up. I know for me, I'm not sleeping well. We've got a lot going on here in the Alumni Association with our 2014 initiatives, and now here's the Rose Bowl, and it's all hands on deck for that. So, and then the normal family stressors, and I'm not even nearly ready for what needs to happen in my family. And here comes these cold viruses and such. And so it's all just this big rock rolling down a hill. And you may not be, you know, perfect with what you eat and perfect with what you do or do not spend, and getting your 30 minutes of exercise in every day and going to bed at 8:30. But if you can chip away at some of this by just being aware that this really does have to be part of your job search strategy, and you need to commit to making improvements in these 5 areas, I think you will experience some gain.
Lisa?
I don't know how many, everybody loves Raymond fans are out there, but we can't talk about, in my view, keeping loved ones and family members out of our job search and minimizing the advice they give effectively without including Marie. I love Marie. And Marie has a heart of gold. She really does. I mean, she is this feisty mom who really inserted herself into just about every aspect of her kids' lives, her grown children's lives, right? But she did it with the best of intentions. And you look at Marie and you realize this is a person who, the minute she got it in her mind she was going to do something, she acted on it. Maybe sometimes without as much thought as her family members would have loved. And she was persistent about it. She didn't let it go, and she was determined to get the outcome that she felt was important. So when you think about it in big picture terms, having Maries in your world, if they are actually doing things for you that are helpful, could be a huge asset, right? Because who wouldn't want somebody who's motivated to get something done and see that you experience things and achieve things that are important as an ally, as somebody on your team. But what do we need to do with the Maries in this world when their actions don't always help us, or when their words make us feel worse, or when their suggestions are such that you just want to kind of knock them on the forehead and say, you know, I've already thought about that. I've been doing this. That's kind of a duh suggestion for me. The strategy for friends and family really revolves, in my view, around these 4 points. I mean, first and foremost, you need to give them a job. You need to give them something to do, okay? And you need to be specific about it. What we tend to do is unload to our friends and family our frustration. But we shut them down from being, or maybe we don't shut it down, we just resent it when it happens, from them being part of the solution. Well, if you love somebody, which the 4th point mentions, and you see them struggling with something, you want to help them get to the other side. And so that's what people want from them. But you have to give them a job. And it can't just be the job of spotting other jobs, right? Let me know if you see something. That's not good enough. It probably doesn't help you because it depends on, first of all, where they're circulating to even know if they're going to be tripping over the types of opportunities that will be helpful for you. And if they're not naturally tripping over in a position where they would be tripping over opportunities, then they're going to start putting themselves into unnatural situations for them. And we don't always function at our best when we're not in our natural zone, right? So giving them a job could be something like maybe there's a few business periodicals for your area or for your profession that you just haven't had time to comb through. So maybe one of your friends or family members is combing through those periodicals for leads on growing businesses and promotions. Maybe another family member is driving around town and looking for construction and pointing out signs pointing out buildings that seem to be adding to their teams and expanding, or signage announcing that a new company has come to this area. Maybe another family member is reviewing cover letters for you or reviewing your resume for you. And this isn't something, again, that you want to ask everybody to do because, first of all, everybody's going to have a different opinion. If you are lucky enough to have received the same opinion every time you've shown your resume to different people, you are definitely in the minority. So you want to minimize that. But give them a job, and maybe the job that you're giving them has nothing to do with your job search. Maybe their job is to make sure that you're going to bed by 10 o'clock every night. Maybe their job is to be a workout partner with you at a gym so you stay motivated, right? Maybe the job is to help you by reading articles about job search strategy or learning LinkedIn so that they can demo it for you. Who knows what it is? But give them something, a nugget of your job search, so they don't feel like they have to do your whole job search for you, because that's when it really starts to get frustrating. Show them you have a plan, because if I feel like something is in chaos, but I see that the individuals who are primarily responsible for the chaos have a plan, it's easier for me as an outsider to sit back and kind of watch it unfold. But me, as a control freak, if I get an inkling that there is not a plan around the chaos, then it's really hard for me to not roll up my sleeves and jump in and take over. And I know there are often times when when people will say, well, I have a plan. I just don't feel like sharing it with everybody. I don't feel like I should have to report to my spouse or my parent or my sibling or whomever what I'm doing, when, where, why, and how. Because that's frustrating too, to feel like you've got a report card to turn in to your friends and family members on what you're doing in your search. But I have to stick up for those individuals and say, again, if you're using them to unload frustrations from your job search, but you are not balancing that message with nuggets on what you're doing to get yourself out of this situation, if it's things are hopeless, it's not going to change for me, because of my age, because of my skill set, because of where I live, whatever it is, then it's natural for the people to care about you if they think that they've got a way to fix it for you, for them to try. So make sure you show them that you have a plan. And if you have family members or friends who are indicating, gee, either because they're saying it directly or their actions are suggesting that they believe that you're not really doing anything, I want you to think about why they would feel that way. And I would like you to even consider asking them why they think that way. And not in a, why do you think that way? Why do you think I'm not doing anything rhetorical type of question, but with a genuine question mark at the end. What gives you the impression that I'm not making an effort? Because their feedback, when you listen to it, might also give you clues on some things that you could change up relating to your job search, right? Because if your loved ones are looking at you and getting the impression that you're not putting the effort in that you need, it's possible that other people who you might be more interested in impressing, networking contacts, prospective employers, are walking away with the same impression. And so it's important for you to know why that might be happening. And it's also important for you to realize that, again, your friends and family are reacting in a way it's a bit of a reflection of how you've given them permission to act. And it's kind of that their view of you and their view of how much control you have at the situation is based on what you've shown them or what you've said to them. Dave, I want to call you into this conversation a bit because, we have to talk about these friends and family members as really as your fans. They're your assembled fan club who's going to go to work for you. And I want to talk, without hitting people over the head too much with sports analogies, about our current Rose Bowl team and about how things looked for this team at the beginning of the year and about observations that you had in that very important game against Ohio State and Indy. Are you ready and able to chime in on that?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, I don't have volume on you, Dave.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I don't have volume. Oh, I see a Spartan typing.
I'm
you
talking.
Can hear him. Okay, maybe I've turned my volume down. Go ahead, Dave.
Spartan can hear me.
You know what? I turned my volume down. Thank you, Spartan and Kat.
Thank you, Spartan. Well, it's interesting, Lisa, because you were fortunate enough to be at that game, and so you had a better vantage point than my living room, I think. But there's one thing that I caught that you didn't. At one point in the game, it was really interesting to me because I've never seen a football team do this before, and I think it was the offense. And if you watch this game, you know what I'm talking about if you saw it on TV. They actually turned the bench around and stopped watching the game, and I think it was somewhere in the third quarter when Ohio State had come back and it looked pretty miserable there. And after a good start, and it was so exciting to see that happen. It was just interesting to see. I think it was the offense turn the bench around and not really be watching the game. And really, I think there was something being said there in the sense that they had to keep their heads in the game and not get worried about what was happening on the field. But the other thing in talking about fans is they were actually facing their fans. So it was kind of like joining with their fans in the sense that, hey, we're all in this together. Fans, you need to be cheering loud. We need to have our heads in the game, and when it's time for our time to get back on the field, we're going to be ready for that. And I don't think that it's interesting, Lisa, when we were talking about this, your perspective was it didn't ever feel like they lost hope uh, in the stadium. Well, from my living room and with my friends on Facebook who are talking about the game, it did start feeling a little hopeless, like, oh man, this game is not going to go in the direction we'd like to go. And so those last couple touchdowns were amazing. And I guess the point here is to say that the fans aren't on the field with you, but they are so important and they have a job. And also you need to make sure that you're keeping track of your role, right? I mean, when you were talking, Lisa, about this scenario with just relationships with people, it's not hard to forget that our spouse and our kids are affected by our job loss. Um, in fact, that's one of the big stressors, right? If you have a spouse and children, you feel that pressure to get the income, especially around the holidays. Oh no, I can't get my kid the Christmas present I really wanted, and they keep asking for it and all those kind of things. And oftentimes we tend to try to kind of distance ourself and carry that alone, or we grumble and complain to the spouse or whatever. Um, and and I think it's important to realize that these people, your kids, your spouse, are in essence they're kind of your fans. If we're using that Ohio State game metaphor again, all they can do is be on the sidelines and cheer. You have to be willing to kind of accept that, and you also have to accept that your role uh, is not unemployed to them. Your role is dad or mom, and I think any family they're going to recognize that as the most important role. We tend to internalize in our society the role of whatever occupation you're in as the most important. And I would just encourage you to let your fans kind of do the work that they're supposed to do by allowing them to cheer them on and turn that bench around when you need to and face them and just receive their cheers. Let them be on that team. There's nothing they can do to win the game, but let them cheer. And you get your head in the game. When you're ready, get back on that field and get back in there for that touchdown, which often can come when you just don't expect it.
I love your point. And first of all, I need to say, if you've been trying to interject all this time and I haven't heard you, I'm so sorry. But the second thing, I love your point about how your family and friends don't view you as a job seeker. They view you as Dave or Dad or what have you. And I think it's so important to carry that one step further and say that to have a successful outcome with your job search, it's so important that prospective employers don't see you as a job seeker either, because nobody's hiring a job seeker. There's no position description in an organization for a job seeker. And we get into this job search mechanism process and we become a job seeker, and then nobody knows what to do with us. because we're not Dave, we're not Lisa, we're not a human resource manager, we're not a graphic designer. We're this process of resumes and cover letters and phone calls and emails. So I think that point, and I love how you tied that to the analogy of turning around and facing your fans, because don't you think, Dave, that a lot of job seekers do the opposite? They really face away from their fans and maybe even plug their ears a little bit until this game is done.
Absolutely. I think one of the greatest hardships in a job seeker's life is often that they are alone. I mean, there's this sense that, oh, why is this happening to me, and I can't believe this happened, and I'm alone, and now I've got to carry this burden. But really, most of us aren't. We tend to kind of differentiate between our work life and our home life, and those two things get to be separate. And when you don't have the work life anymore, there's not that segmentation. So I think, again, it goes back to that whole feeling of the identity is what I do for pay. Yeah. Instead of this other, more critical role, if you ask me, of being the dad or the brother or the husband or the whatever it is. And I think the title of this webinar is A Joyful Job Search. I think when you start to focus on those relationships in those people around you, it can kind of get you out of that kind of funk that you're in of, oh, I'm just unemployed and I don't have this value. That the marketplace, honestly, I've been there. The marketplace, honestly, is telling you, no, we don't want you. It kind of reinforces your lack of value. But really, when you focus on what's really important, those relationships, that can bring you the joy that leads right back to the attitude that Lisa started this off with.
Yeah.
And you need that. You need to carry that kind of attitude that your importance as dad, mom, brother, sister, whatever it is more important than your role as a mechanic or whatever it happens to be. And when you take that person with you to the room, wherever it's at, a holiday party or an interview or wherever it is, you tend to kind of get over that the hurdle of the internalized pain and frustration from having been a job seeker.
Well, and you made a nice point that we're going to segue into the next component, in speaking about how a lot of job seekers are in this alone place, whether it's physically or mentally, and here we come the holiday season where, as hard as you try, you're forced into situations where you really can't be alone, and that's where it becomes additionally stressful and frustrating. So let's move on to maintaining and initiating contact this time of year, because it's a little bit different. Well, it doesn't have to be different. In fact, in all truth, I think if people treated the rest of the year like the holiday season with some of this advice, they would probably have better results in terms of engaging other people. But the first point in terms of initiating and maintaining contact is to stay busy and take a break, which sounds ridiculous. But let me clarify that. You cannot stop your job search really anytime. Definitely not until you found an opportunity. And then a number of people who have been displaced unexpectedly will point out that even once you've secured employment, it's so important to keep visible and to keep building networking contacts so you're not starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting all the time. So what I mean by stay busy and take a break is you need to constantly have balls in the air in terms of what you're doing for your search. Adding new people to your life, adding new information, adding new tools to your job search, updating that resume, what have you. What you need to take a break from, however, because I think you've earned it, are some of those processes that they haven't given you good results anyway. They probably aren't going to give you good results down the road, but they're part of it and maybe need to be a smaller percentage of your job search, like those Indeed.com postings and Monster.com postings and what have you. But it is okay to stop doing some of the things that that you just can't motivate yourself to do anyway. Because if you're not feeling it, even if you force yourself to do it, it's not going to necessarily be the best output, right? So how can you stay busy? I mean, maybe it is about switching to phone calls versus emails. Maybe it is about, okay, I've hit this part of town. Now I'm going to go exploring this other part of town. Maybe I'm going to use December for coffee chats to catch up with people that I've missed out on. Right? So, but I'm doing things, and I'm constantly. Maybe I'm going to use this time to take a moment to assess what I bring to the table as a professional, or to pay attention to what industry developments have there been, what other fields are emerging, and what skills do those fields need, and gee, do I have any of those skills? But you're not stepping completely out of figuring out where you fit and where you'd be valuable. I think it's also important to adjust to and understand the timing of what's going on with your networking contacts and prospective employers this time of year. I mean, you see the next bullet point, well, it's not bulleted, but the next point, December showers bring January flowers. I mean, people will say December's just a crummy time of year because there's not a lot of job offers happening. That's really because of a lot of reasons. In order to have job offers, you need to be able to assemble full teams for the interview process. Maybe that HR person needs to be at their desk so they can sign off on the paperwork and make the salary offer. Maybe they're waiting for January budgets to come into play. But that doesn't mean that there isn't activity going on around staff load, around their org charts. And so it's so important to keep on people's radar. It's also important to remember that, again, these individuals have lives just like you have and just like I have, and so their mind is on different things. And they know that they need to talk business to an extent, but there's also other things that they want to talk about. I mean, we're here in the Alumni Association, so fortunately for us, talking about the Rose Bowl is part of our job. But if I worked in a different organization, there would still be a part of me that would have the Rose Bowl on my mind. So just being hammered over the head with business, and especially hearing about, again, going back to those folks with their Happy New Year hands and those feelings that they had. If the messaging that I'm getting from you as a job seeker is, you said you were going to call me and then you didn't, you said I was going to get this email and it didn't arrive, or your job posting isn't up yet, or when do you think you're going to do that? If I'm feeling pressure right now because it's year end, because I've got to deal with budget stuff, because my family has holiday things, because I'm getting ready to go on vacation, and you're there reminding me that maybe there's ways that I could be doing my job better, whether it's true or false, the human in me is going to want to separate myself from that, right? Because it's just going to be a heavier load to carry. Which kind of brings me to the point of the snail mail for the win. I mean, when I talk about snail mail, we're talking about mail that comes through the post office. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my email right now is full of retail offers, of requests for donations from nonprofits, of all sorts of things. I mean, most of my email has turned into what my actual post office box has turned into. Just a bunch of things where I know I'm on somebody's list. There's nothing personal to it. The stuff that I read right now is the stuff that comes in the personal envelopes. It's the first thing that I grab. In fact, we have our mailboxes here at Spartan Stadium are these, those little bins that are kind of attached to the front of your door with adhesive. And most days mine's dangerously full to the point where it could probably drop to the floor because I just go up to my box and I only pull out the things that look like personal correspondence. And it's quite possible that decision makers are doing the same thing. So write a letter. Write a note congratulating an organization on what they accomplished that year. Write them thanking them again for the time that they gave you, even if it was back in June, with a quick update on what your life has been doing since that interview. Write a thank you note. Write a thank you note to 20 people today, right? I mean, today. Go to Target, buy some thank you cards, and write people a note, a personal note, recalling something specific that they've done for you this year, whether it's relating to your job search or not. Because again, that's taking you out of the me focus and putting the attention on other people. It's building relationships, reinforcing relationships, and it's also satisfying that need to give. Because in all honesty, I mean, I'm 42 years old. There's not much that people can give me right now that I would get excited about in terms of a trinket. Dave will also tell you I'm pretty cheap. But you can give me a thank you, and it will light up my day. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And not getting in that mix of emails. I'll also tell you that picking up the phone and calling could be a way to stand out. Because again, this email thing, I can't stress enough. I don't know. Dave, I don't know. Dave, how many emails do you get a week? I'm catching you off guard on you.
How many? I would guess that probably an average week I probably have 100 a day that I'm sifting through.
Right. How many note cards do you get in the mail?
Like a day, zero. I probably get maybe one a quarter.
Zero. Right. And I mean, I think we all can think about this for ourselves and realize that we haven't done that. And maybe what we need to do too is have a contact, like a little business card, like maybe a little card with just a notation of your goals for 2014, or a quick update on you, or a link to your LinkedIn profile if something's changed on your end. But definitely reach out and thank people. One neat thing that a job seeker that I worked with, boy, gosh, it was probably a decade ago, did was she went out to Starbucks and she bought like 10 $5 gift cards, okay? And so she sent to 10 individuals just a $5 gift card that said, you know what, you really gave me a boost in my job search this past year, and I would like to pay you back by giving you a little boost of caffeine, right? She got a lot of phone calls and email thank yous for that, and she stuck out to them for that. So another thing that you can do in terms of initiating and maintaining contact is having a reason to reach out to people is so helpful. So one reason is, as we just talked about, saying thank you. But another reason versus, hey, have you heard of anything yet? And has there been any progress yet? Or, is to inquire about and even share your own 2013 accomplishments. You lost my sound? I don't know where my sound is. Can you hear me? Spartan's typing. He's going to help us out here. Dave lost my sound. Oh, only for 5 seconds. Okay. So having a reason, thank you, having a reason to reach out to people other than going back to the knee-jerk, what's the status, have you heard of anything type of boring cliche conversation, is to inquire about and share your 2013 accomplishments and goals. Start with the inquire. Notice I didn't say share first. Inquire is you actively calling some of your networking contacts, some of the companies maybe that you've interviewed with in the past, and just, getting down to figure out what happened in their year. What's changed about them? I mean, for most of us, we've had things that have happened to us that have changed our lives, maybe slightly, maybe dramatically over the past year. Let's find out what's changed in the lives of the people who we've been interacting with, because sometimes that change is something that we could maybe help them out with, not even relating to getting a job, just being a good person. And sometimes those changes could actually give us an idea strategically of ways and methods that we could collaborate with them and have a different outcome for ourselves. Talking to them about their 2014 goals, well, again, that would help you perhaps not just to hear what they're excited about and talk about the future, because remember, we can't change history. We can only change the future. So spending time talking about what they see for the future could takes them to a place that's exciting and hopeful, and could put us in a position to trip over information that will help us figure out how we fit in the mix. And then being able to share our own goals for 2014. Again, it forces us through the mental exercises that we don't take enough to think about the future and what those goals are. And they don't have to be huge goals. They can even be small ones that are, broken down into nuggets. Going back to how to have your manage your family and friends. Remember, we weren't handing over our full job search to those friends and family members. We were giving them pieces of our job search that would be helpful to us. Giving our networking contacts pieces of our 2014 goals gives them an opportunity to help participate in the fulfillment of those goals without overwhelming them with too much information or giving them permission to be responsible for all of those goals coming into shape for us, right? We got 10 minutes to go, and we've got to real quickly talk about growing the network. Your network, again, this is all year long. A true network, we see the Verizon guy with all of the people standing behind him in that commercial, and they talk about your Verizon network. I want you to have that visually to realize you can have all those people standing behind you as part of who you're connected to, but I would like you to realize that to have an effective network, you need to do more than the Verizon guy does. They can't just be in your phone, and they can't just be in your LinkedIn contacts. They have to be people that you have real relationships with. And so maybe it's not as many people as are standing behind the Verizon guy, although they could lead you to that many people. Having real relationships with people means that there's trust, means that you've invested some time with them, significant time, which is hard to do if you're feeling like you need to be alone and kind of withdrawn from the process. It takes effort. And people can tell when there's an effort being made in the relationship, which you can feel that too. If we're interacting and I'm not making an effort with you, you're going to know it. You're going to shut me down. And if I come at you later with an ask, it's maybe you'll help me just because you're nice and anyway, and you're a Spartan, and Spartans help Spartans. But at the end of the day, if I've extended an effort, you're more likely to return with an effort. And that's where we get into reciprocity. And job seekers get confused with reciprocity, because reciprocity doesn't mean that we help each other with exactly the same things or exactly on the same level. Everybody in this world, if we take time to get to know them, could probably use help with something. Even that wildly successful entrepreneur who we think is connected to all the movers and shakers that we need in this world to advance our job search, if we take the time to talk to that person about their goals and to ask them about what's changed in their life in 2013 and to figure out where they get it, where they spend their time, we can find ways to add value to their life. And so there's this thought, well, I can't really give to other people until I have this new job worked out, until I've got better income. But that's not true. So maybe that successful entrepreneur is now dealing with the fact that their elderly parents need to come live with them. And they've never had to deal with that before. But you've had to deal with it. Or you've had connections to people who have had to deal with it. And you can help connect them to things that are important resources for them. Reciprocity comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And again, thank you is part of giving to people. And sometimes that's all you're able to give at that moment, but maybe that was all that I needed to feel like we've got a two-way relationship. So basic networking rules, and again, especially through the holidays when we're festive and in a good mood and thinking about relationships, is remembering that everybody matters. Everybody matters. Dave and I were joking about, sometimes when we get together, even as family members, there are some that we feel we really connect with, and others where it's like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to see George again, right? Maybe the brother-in-law or that cousin or what have you. If you can shift that way of thinking, to realize that even if George and I don't always see eye to eye or wouldn't have naturally spent a lot of time together, George does matter in the grand scheme of things. There's something that he's doing with his life that is adding to the world in one way, shape, or form. And George is probably connected to other people who, whether they consider themselves best buddies with him, could essentially, if you know about them and if they know about you, advance your job search. So we can't keep making face value assumptions of who's going to be the individual who's connected to the other individuals that's going to give us the positive outcome that we need. Give. Again, if we start networking situations, and I don't just mean that with cheese and cracker events, right, where you're circulating around a room. When we start relationship situations, any situation when we're interacting with other people, especially this time of year, with the mindset of I'm going to take time to find out about the other person first. I'm going to ask them questions. If they want to know about me, they will ask. Based on what they tell me, I'm going to give of myself what I can to help them with their 2014 goals, to help them with something that's stressing them out, and whether I'm giving advice or a connection or maybe that $5 coffee card, because that's something that would be better for me to put $5 towards than maybe this other thing that is just going to be thrown away the day after Christmas or whatever it is you celebrate. Balance of the messaging. Again, this is not the time of year where people want to talk 24/7 about professional topics. If you are in a job search, you may need time to talk about professional things, but don't make that all that's people are hearing about from you. Balance it with the conversations about the big snowstorm. Balance it with conversations about the Rose Bowl. Balance it with things that feel like we're having a bit of a smorgasbord of conversation. So I still feel interested, and other people around you still feel interested in having that connectivity. Grow from collaborative opportunities. There are a lot of people coming together this time of year to do special things. Maybe it's to help a nonprofit that's falling short on funds. Maybe it's to recognize soldiers who are returning or having to leave. Maybe it's to surprise a retiring person with something. Maybe it's to do something for your city. Maybe it's to shovel all the driveways because you're like my neighborhood, and I don't know, I guess they've given up on shoveling our neighborhood streets anymore. So grow by coming out and being part of something where you've got a team working to get something done. And remember, everybody matters on that team. And you finding out who these people are, who you are collaborating with and working with. I mean, so often we do these volunteer things, and after we're done, we couldn't really tell you a majority of the people who were part of this cause with us together. I mean, we saw them, they saw us. Make an intentional effort, because people who experience you in collaborative settings are more likely to view you as collaborative and as a team player, which is one big thing that employers say that they want. We want collaborative team players. And if I've experienced you that way, I'm more likely to talk about you that way. We want to lead with situations versus jobs. Again, what I mean by that is talking about situations where you fit, talking about the future, not what you've done so much in the past, but talk about, a lot of people this is their goal for 2014. This is the thing that the companies in this industry really want to try to capture. This is what I'm hearing from decision makers in this type of role that they're dreaming about for 2014. And I'm excited about that, because these are the skills that I have that fit those types of situations, right? So getting people to see you in situations in the future where you would rightfully fit is a good way for them to know how to talk about you in the present and future tense, versus talking about, oh, my friend, he's just had this bad luck, he was laid off, and this is what's happened to him, and I'm really just hoping I can help find somebody who would be willing to talk to him for an interview. Again, that's history, and that's something that people can't influence and change. Enlist your supporters and give them a job. Kind of the same rules that we had for our family members. Those networking contacts, have a role for them. Maybe these people are going to help you with this type of decision maker, or this is the person who's going to be that networking buddy to those cheese and cracker parties that you're just dreading because you view yourself, right, Dave, to be the introvert that needs that shove to get out in some of these situations. Realize that this is the time of year where you have a lot of good excuses and justification to cross paths with individuals that you wouldn't normally have crossed paths with before. Maybe it's because, again, families coming together that you only see once a year. Maybe it's because somebody's having an open house. Maybe it's because your kids are having holiday shows at their school. There's a lot of reasons to be intersecting with people. And if you don't seize the day and make sure that you are introducing yourself to people, again, not as a job seeker, like what Dave was talking about, introducing yourself as George, introducing yourself as Chelsea's dad, right? As a real living, breathing person, and taking a moment to ask those people who you are crossing paths with who they are and how they fit and why they are there, what brought them there, and what they hope to do in 2014. You're capitalize on these opportunities to be in the presence of people that when you're back home or back in your office and in that silo, you may not have a chance to interact with until next year rolls around and you're in a similar setting, if that similar setting even pops up again. And then again, the final note, just reinforcing, you've got to remind yourself it isn't about you. It really isn't about you. The challenges you're having with your job search aren't about you, not really, which is hard to accept because, okay, so you're the common denominator, in this chaos, right? But it's not personally about you. It's possibly about your strategy, right? And that this time of year and the stress that you're feeling is normal, but when you're out with other people, the stress that you're feeling does not trump the overall experience that other people are having, right? We don't want you to be that person who's so used to talking about what's not going right that you don't even hear yourself when you're doing that over the shrimp and punch bowl at Jane's New Year's Eve party, right? Because again, people are thinking about the future on New Year's Eve. They're not thinking about 2000. Once January 1st comes, nobody's thinking about 2013 anymore. And so you've got to join the crowd and be looking to the future and be looking to figure out a better idea of who these people are that you're blessed to have in your life. Your fan, turn yourself around, as Dave Isbell mentioned, and face your fans. And if you need them howling because you're at a crossroads where you need more momentum, do what those players do, raise your hands in the air and fan them, for their involvement. We need you. We need you here. And when they're doing things that aren't helpful to them, don't tell them you're not helping me. Don't tell them, I need you to stay out of this. Don't tell them that you're capable of doing this by yourself. Appreciate that these are people here with the motivation and interest in helping you, and give them a job and let them be a part of your solution. So that was a little bit more preachy than I intended, but of course I got into a hot hurry here because here we are at 1:33. So that's it. I do want to close by saying Dave and I are here. We are in the Alumni Association. We're on the Career Services team. We don't really do things like resume writing and things like that, but we are here to talk to you about strategy. Dave is wonderful with conversations with those individuals who are trying to figure out. I see, Dave, it shows you're raising your hand. Do you just need to talk?
Yeah, I have something to say, but I'll let you wrap up.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought maybe my earpiece wasn't working again. Dave is wonderful with conversations for those of you that are trying to figure out, gee, what should I be doing? I don't even know what I love anymore professionally. And I'm really here to help with the strategic component of I know what I want to do, but how do I get to that point, right? And my contact information is here. Dave's was spared because he's had some bugs himself, and I wasn't sure if he'd be joining us. So Dave, what you got?
Well, I have a couple things. So first of all, to my fellow introverts and shy people, um, I just want to encourage you. So um, I I have a hard time with this. Go hang out with people, talk to people, network, all that things. But you know, I want to encourage you about this because this time of year, especially, here's one thing that I can tell. If you hear this sentence I'm about to say and you just something in your heart says, yes, that's me, you're probably an introvert. Use this time while it's a little bit slower to do some quiet reflection. Go inside yourself and spend some time and ask yourself, what do you really want? What do you have to really contribute? Spend that time to kind of build yourself up, because us introverts, we need that time. We kind of have to have a plan inside of our own heads before we go out and talk to people. So that's one thing that I would suggest you use this time for. But the other thing is, it's so true that this time of year there's a lot of social engagements that you could get invited to hang out with people that you might not ever see again, or have opportunity to see in normal circumstances. So if you are an introvert or you're shy like me, here's my tip for you. Go to those places, but go with your extrovert friend, or if you're going to show up by yourself, find the person that's fluttering around the room talking to everybody else and introduce yourself to that person. Just all you have to do from there is just nod your head and say uh-huh a lot, because they will give you lots of nuggets to kind of chew on, and all you have to do is be attentive and listen to them and just have basic questions like, what do you think about that, or tell me more about that, and they will take it upon themselves to introduce you, because an extrovert's going to want to get out of there to the next person as quick as they can. So before they leave, have them connect you with another person. Now, I have a really big network, and I am very much a shy introvert, and this is how I've gotten a big network. Taking people like Lisa and just having her take me around the room and introduce me to people has gotten me very far. The other thing I'd say is that you have to be true to yourself. I think authenticity and transparency are very, very important. So you need to be honest with yourself. And the introverts in the room have to kind of spend the time in that quiet reflection to be true to themselves, to find out how do they really want to represent themselves, especially in this scenario when you're in this kind of job change, job search kind of mode. The second thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly, I know we're over time, but I think it's really important in this discussion, is just the issue of depression. And before I go into that, I need to give a disclaimer that I am, my part-time role outside of MSU is I am a professional mental health therapist. I don't practice here in this office, and don't take this as professional advice. If you need professional advice, I'd suggest that you go talk to somebody about that. But I want to give you a couple of tips, because especially if you live in Michigan, you can definitely be seasonally affected by this. When we don't see the sun for like 6 months out of the year, we tend to start feeling a little depressed. So just a couple of things to try in this. Usually it means there's a vitamin D deficiency, so get that into your diet. Lisa already mentioned diet, so try to cut back a little bit more on the processed foods and the sugars, and instead add some more green things into your diet. Remember that alcohol is a depressant, so you might want to keep that in moderation if you're using that at all. A lot of people they'll go to like tanning. So if you go tanning once a month during the winter or something like that, or if you can afford it, get a light box for your house. Those can be pretty expensive, but getting yourself some light can be very helpful. Getting yourself active, so exercise is really, really good. Things like yoga can be very helpful. The other thing I would suggest is, if you're a spiritual person, cover yourself in prayer or meditation or what other disciplines you happen to practice to keep yourself centered. It also won't help to kind of get a couple more things that are kind of productive and fun. I wouldn't suggest, if you're feeling kind of depressed, to take on some big project, but do something little. So for me, I love reading books, but I don't get a lot of time to do that. So what I'll just kind of set a goal to get through a good book. Or I'll organize the various collections that I have in my house. So it's productive, I'm putting stuff in order, and I'm kind of having a little bit of fun with it. It's not a big deal. If I have if I want to clean out my garage, I'd never try to do that in the winter. But just something little, so it gives you that little sense of accomplishment. Lisa mentioned getting enough sleep. I'd also say keeping on the same schedule, so going to bed at the same time and getting up in the morning. Usually, or a lot of times, I find job seekers like, hey, I can stay up all hours of the night. I would suggest you to keep the habits that you had when you were working so that you're on that same schedule. And finally, we've talked a lot about connecting with other people. If you're really, really feeling like this is a dark time in your life, I am biased as a therapist, but I really believe counseling can be very, very helpful, and I would suggest shopping around for that, or at least if you can't have access to that for some way, get together with some really good friends that really are supporting you, because you need those people in your life. So with that, that's all I had to say, and I'll just hand it back to Lisa and let her close this out for you. Thank you for listening to us, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dave. And I think in addition to your wonderful advice, pulling out your comment about focusing on little things and making it manageable, I hope that people kind of pulled from this entire conversation that most of what we're suggesting really is about little things. It's about breaking down what seems big and overwhelming into something smaller, smaller duties for our networking contacts, smaller functions for ourselves, like those thank you notes. And amazingly, I think we do get more done and are less overwhelmed by it when it's smaller. So thank you for that nugget, and thank you for talking candidly about seasonal aspects of it. So thank you again for those who joined us today. I'm sorry for going over. We will not have our normal cast on the fourth Thursday of the month, because that is through, of course, Christmas holiday. But we will be back at it January 9th, as I mentioned at the beginning of the cast, with Pick Me, Resume Strategies to Get Noticed. And we would love to have you on that cast as well. In the meantime, if you would like a copy of today's webcast, you can hit the email that's in the chat area, haynesb@msu.edu. If you would like to reach out to Dave or myself, my email address is on this slide. I'd be happy to forward any messages to Dave that need to get there, and we wish you wonderful ending of 2013 and beginning of 2014. Thank you for your support of the MSU Alumni Association.